Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Stoughton Writers Group. I'm Mike Hardman, and with the founder of the group and also the author of Heartman and Memoir. Today, it's my honor to have this guest, Jen Fusco. Hoye, is Hoye say it?
Hoye.
Hoye, yeah, Hoye. I'll make sure I check that out. Jen's written a very important book, but I want to give a warning before we go into this, because we're going to talk about suicide. I know that is a problem, triggers some things for people and can cause problems. I think, I just want to make sure you do that so you have time to change it, move on to something else. But for those who want to stay along, this is a very important book because Jen deals with a topic people don't talk about in thick tattoos and breaking taboos. Like, it kind of rhymes too. It's a great title. But she deals with it bravely and honestly and in depth. I told you, this is a book I call a triple header. I cried, I laughed, and I felt frustration sometimes too. And I think you were brave, my friend, to go and do what you did in the honor of your brother. But I want to start, I've never done this before, but I want to start with the last sentence of the book, and then I'll let you talk after this, okay? Because in the end, what remains isn't loss, it's love. It's the choice every day to keep moving forward, even when you have no idea where the road leads. That is a great message to everybody dealing with it. How'd you come up with that, and let's go to the story. That takes us into the story.
Because so much life is like running.
Yeah.
All you need to do is take one step, the next step, and that's the only step that matters. And grief is a lot like that.
How do you come to that point at the end where you got to that? What was the steps you took, do you think?
It wasn't planned. The first several years after I lost my brother, I wasn't living at all. I was kind of just in this state of limbo. And then 2020 hit and everyone was home and I needed an escape. And so I started by taking a walk.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually that walking became running. And I noticed that as I was moving, I was feeling a little bit better mentally. And I was having conversations with my brother that I had put off for several years.
That was a fascinating part of it. The conversations you had were so enlightening. And I'm a little brother, so I identify with Teddy. The things he did, I want to go into the things he did to you, but it was a lot of little brotherish, and that made me laugh. But you had a lot of good conversations with him while you were walking.
Yeah, I felt like in the first few years, I felt like I needed to hide my grief, and I didn't want my family to see all these different emotions that I was experiencing. And so I just kind of shoved it down, and just the act of being physical and walking allowed me to just start having those conversations.
But you also had a lot of people depending on you where you're going through your grief, your family getting through it themselves and all that too. So like in the book, it seemed like you took that burden on too.
A lot of us do. And it's not just sibling loss survivors, but the one thing that I wish someone had told me when my brother died was, you don't have to be strong for your parents or for your kids, that it's okay to feel everything that you're feeling because it's normal. That was advice that I wish I had gotten, and advice that I have paid forward many times.
You do. We'll talk a little about the healing miles too at some down a little further. Don't forget to talk about that.
Okay.
More. Definitely talk about that. But also, like I was telling you, I wrote my book about going through heart surgery and death and coming back, and how difficult it was to relive the experiences. I can imagine for you that must have been tenfold.
Absolutely. So the process of writing, because I work full time and I train for races and I have kids and I volunteer, I dedicated every Sunday. And I locked myself in my office and said, unless somebody is in mortal danger, please do not open this door. And a lot of times I found myself getting really emotional as I was writing or editing or reliving some of these moments. But it was also cathartic in many ways.
Mm-hmm. But also you dealt with a lot of difficult topics too. I mean, that must have been hard for other people to read too. I remember writing the book wondering what other people were going to think about what I wrote about them. And as I was reading your book, I was feeling the same thing. Like, what are people going to think?
When I started posting my morning reflections on social media, I was a little nervous because I write about all of the things that we don't talk about.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not just death and grief and bereavement, but my own mental health and anxiety and struggles that I'm experiencing or someone else is experiencing. And so in the beginning, I was really nervous to do that, to put myself out there so vulnerably and authentically. But over time, I would get messages from people I knew or people that I didn't know at all that said, hey, what you wrote today really resonated. I really needed to hear that today.
I felt that when I was reading it too. I wanted to give you a hug sometimes. And other times, other times it was like, I wanted to being a dad, kind of the dad part of me wanted to give you a hug because I feel like what you were going through. But I also felt the bravery of it. And I was trying to find the right word, but there's no holds barred. You just let everything go. And I think that's what makes the book important, because you end the stigma of it, and it's okay to feel bad. I think sometimes we don't think it's okay to feel bad.
No, and that's my hope, because my whole life, my brother's whole life, and our whole generation, it was, suck it up, right. Be a man, or, be tough, right?
Exactly. And
by not experiencing or expressing those emotions, that's how we got to this place.
Right.
And so I write, and I continue to write because, in part, I wasn't able to save my brother when he needed me the most. But if I can help even just one person feel less alone, or feel seen, or know how to reach out for help, then this is worth it.
That's how I feel about my book too. If I can help stop one person from going through what I went through health-wise, and maybe pay more attention to your health, that you don't have to go through that. And that would be the goal, somebody not have to go through it. But I've also found, since writing my book, is that, like you, I've had people reach out to me when they're going through a similar situation, and I obviously have had that too.
Absolutely. And I've met so many people because of this.
Mm-hmm.
And suicide loss is we say it's the worst club you could ever be in, and that you don't want membership to. But it's also the most supportive community I've ever experienced. And so it's easy to have these conversations with other loss survivors because they get it, and they don't know who else they can talk to. So who else could you talk to but another survivor?
Exactly. I want to talk a little bit about your brother. I found it was just important you didn't know him. I had a good time. I think it would have been a fun guy to know, and I want to make sure you talk about him a little bit. I know he was a pesky little brother, but that was part of his charm.
It was. So my brother Teddy, as you learned in the book, was born 4 months early, weighed half a pound, miracle in so many ways, because 1975 micropreemies were not really a thing. But he was a typical little brother, and I was a typical older sister. So I was not the best sister ever. I was probably the worst sister ever. I was bossy, and I always told on him. But he was clown. He was always punished. We were always in trouble. But we always had each other's backs, always. And he was bullied growing up, and I took on the role of the big sister, and I was willing to fight anybody, no matter how old they were or what, just to protect my brother. And he loved practical jokes, loved them. He played jokes on people at work, at home. His whole life, he even helped my oldest son, Jimmy, come up with pranks every April Fool's Day. And they were over the top and so creative. And I wish I even had a little bit of that.
I loved when you told your kids passed it on. I thought that was so funny, and such a little brother thing to do. You're driving your sister crazy for generations.
My youngest son, Joey, couldn't spell his name.
Yeah, if you could spell the words.
But he could spell the word "but" when he was 3, and Teddy taught him all the words to "Baby Got Back." You can't spell your name, but you know all the words to this song.
Oh, that's funny too. And you grew up in the city, so you're close. Then you grew up in a close Sicilian family, Italian family too. What was that like?
It was amazing. Yeah. There was always somebody to play with, and my grandmother was huge influence on both of our lives. But also there's a lot of pressure and expectation, especially in a Sicilian family, of gender roles and how you were supposed to act, and also around emotion. You don't tell anyone your business. Everything is fine. Everything is always fine. No, everything is not always fine.
But we grew up in an era where that was told to like rub dirt in it. You got a broken arm, rub dirt in it. Kind of thing too.
Yeah.
But I love when you describe your family's meals, though, because being married to an Italian woman, I understand that, and I felt like I was at the dinner table. But you're right, there is a lot of chaos, and you described, and a lot of like stick to your own business. Everything's fine. You don't want to trouble anybody. Too. Was it hard to get over that feeling, that knowing that you needed help, that you had to ask for help?
It did and it didn't. My grandmother, whose name was Jenny, because that's where my name is from.
Typical Sicilian Italian things.
So she was a force of nature. She was 4'10". Nothing scared her. She was the strongest person I know. And so she always taught me, like, and this is kind of where some of my stubbornness comes from, but like, don't ever let anyone see you being afraid. Even if you're afraid, you just do it. You do it, and then you won't be afraid anymore. And I approached reaching out for help in the same way. It is the scariest thing ever to admit that, you know what, I don't got this. I've got everything else. I can do everything. I can't do this on my own.
After your brother's death and after the funeral, is that when it took, when you really needed the help?
I probably did, but I didn't reach out for help until 2020. And so that was 3 long years that I didn't ask for help, and that I just tried to power through, and it was with disastrous results.
Immediately you came out of it, though, which is a good part. You got to focus on you came out of it too.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
but like it was your brother was a ranger too, right? In the city, and he was I always call him, he's a AAA guy. You always call him when you need something. He's that kind of guy.
He was that kind of guy. So he was. Teddy was a park ranger at the Massachusetts State House for 20 years. He was the guy you called if you were moving. Even if you didn't really know him very well, he would show up at 7 a.m., help you move, and probably make you dinner. Like, he was just that kind of person.
Did it help talking about him in the book?
It does. I think a lot of people think after someone dies, I don't want to mention their name because it might upset you, but it doesn't. For most of us, we want to talk about our loved ones because it keeps their memory alive.
And you have conversations. I can't use the words you use sometimes with him, but it's cable. But you have conversations with him, and I thought is that part of the process? Do you think it?
Yeah. And we were 18 months apart. We were so close, and we spent every waking moment together. And even when we were punished, our bedroom doors faced each other, and we would talk to each other through our doors, and so not having him around, like not having those conversations, even when we were adults, and we would talk every day. And then when text was invented, we texted every single day. So to not have those conversations, a huge piece of my life was missing.
You talked difficulty the day it happened and all that, and how you went through that, and you had to stay. It seemed like you had to stay strong for everybody too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was tough.
Yeah.
It was tough. My kids were young. My oldest was a senior in high school. My youngest was only 5. And all of my kids dealt with Teddy's death in different ways. And I wish I had been better equipped. I didn't really understand like the depth of even their grief. So they say hindsight is 20/20.
But you're sharing that with other people, though. What made you decide to do that? What was the?
Because Teddy was such a giving person, and he was a helper. And I felt like when I was thinking of how can I continue without my brother, and how can I live a life in a way that my brother would have lived, and that's by helping. And I've been a writer my whole life. I've always enjoyed writing, and growing up in a Sicilian family, I didn't have the loudest voice, but I could write. And that's kind of how that started. So that's how I decided to help.
But you honor him so well, because I talk about like when people die, the way you remember them is how do you honor them. If you do things that they did, like my grandmother used to always throw money in the Salvation Army thing. So I'm on the train, I always throw money in the Salvation Army. That's my grandmother. You know what I mean? It's not like me doing it. It's like that. I can see my grandmother say, "Okay, great, thank you," kind of thing. But you do that with your work.
That's my hope.
Yeah. What's it been like to be an advocate?
It makes me feel closer to my brother, because growing up, I essentially was his advocate. You know, I was the one that made sure that people weren't bullying him, or I stood up for him when he needed it. And so in a way, I'm still honoring my brother and continuing to do so.
It's hard. I always think with the suicide, it's always difficult because there's no answers. You don't have it too. Like, do you talk to people about that too?
Yeah, one of the things that we talk about in the suicide loss survivor community is the tyranny of hindsight, because people will always say, "Did he leave a note? Did you see it coming?" Like, my brother was one of those people that lit up a room with his smile. You hear it all the time. He was the life of the party. He was a clown. No, I didn't see it coming. But, and when I look back, there were moments that now I say, oh, I should have known, and I didn't. But that's the tyranny of hindsight. You do what you can with the information you have at the time.
Exactly. I've had suicide in my life, affect my life too, and that you're always looking for clues, but there is no answer.
No, there isn't.
The answer is to take away the stigma of it and recognize before what you're doing with healing miles. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah. Well, like I said, I wanted to do something my brother would do.
I think it was funny you started running because he said, I don't want to give away the book, but when you're talking about running in school and the nun coach.
I hated running. I mean, like, my high school team, we were coached by a nun, and we were the worst team ever. And we had some very good runners, but I was not one of them. So I hadn't ran since 1990. And when I started walking, I started thinking, well, what would Teddy do? Well, Teddy would walk 1,000,000 miles if it meant helping one person. So that's what I wanted to do. And I reached out in an online loss survivor group and said, for the month of September, which is Suicide Prevention Month, I would like to honor our loved ones. And within moments, my inbox was filled. And the enormity of that, like, I realized I could walk every day for the rest of my life and only touch a fraction of the people who have been impacted by suicide. And so I started Healing Miles Remembrance walks, which then became runs. And initially I was doing them every day. And that gets heavy. It gets heavy. So now I try to focus on races. I dedicate the miles for specific months. May, which is Mental Health Month. September, Suicide Prevention Month. July was my brother's birthday month, or somebody's birthday or anniversary. They'll reach out and say, could you honor my dad on this day? And that feels right. It gives me space to grieve, because I get to know each person, and I carry a piece of them with me. And so every single day of every year, of every month, like, it gets a lot. So by doing this, it helps me continue to help people, but also protect my own mental well-being.
Because with running, I've worked with running people who are alcoholics and running, and because you get the same adrenaline and healing and all that. Running can be cathartic, when you're running like that. But what were the odds of you back in high school running a Boston Marathon? Was it?
Oh, zero. Zero. And when I told my family, like, I started running, and I did a fundraiser for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. And then I got, like, their annual solicitation to apply to run the Boston Marathon. And I thought, well, I mean, if I'm going to do this, I might as well do it, like, all the way. And what better race than a race my brother loved working on Marathon Monday in Boston? Like, this is the perfect opportunity. And my family said, this is the worst idea we've ever heard. And so I looked at my little one, and he's like, you're going to win. You're going to give everyone the middle finger. I'm not going to win, but I will finish. Yep. And it was the most magical moment of my life to be running down Boylston Street and hear, over the sound of everybody else's voice, my mom screaming my name.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And the other feeling of accomplishment too.
And I got to the end, and I said, Teddy, like, we did this. Because it was definitely not just me. I couldn't have done it alone.
And you still get that feeling when you run the other marathons now?
I do. When my favorite distance is the half marathon, but in every race, when I get to the next to last mile, I always stop and I say, like, Teddy, like, you need to get me to the finish, because I can't do this alone.
Right.
and it's a good feeling. And I always smile that entire last mile because I know he's with me.
I know you get up early and run in the morning. And you ran before we did this interview. I mean, I know you're at 5 a.m. We're Facebook friends, but
Yeah.
I see at 5 a.m. I'm running, and I go, good. I'm going back to bed. I mean,
You know, like I'm not a night owl.
yeah.
I go to sleep at 7:30.
Okay.
Even on vacation when I had no obligations, I was still waking up on my own at 6.
Yeah.
And that is just a good way for me to start my day because if everything else goes wrong, I've at least accomplished that.
Talk about when things have gone wrong, though. When
Everything goes wrong.
I know, but you always like it in the book. You talk about fighting through it. Kind of, you get mad and you get frustrated and all, but then you somehow you power yourself up. Whether it's talking to a friend, you have great friends.
I have an amazing circle of friends, and my entire world has changed in the years since I lost my brother, and started advocating and running. My circle of friends are runners and loss survivors and just some of the most amazing people. And you mentioned that a lot of runners have experienced trauma. And there's a lot of science that backs us up because running is a resilience tool and it's a mental game. And when I was running the Chicago Marathon and I thought, I got this. Like I'm on track to PR and I heard a pop in my left leg. I knew it was my Achilles tendon because it had been hurting. But I looked up and I saw a sign that said Jerk Villa. It was a jerk barbecue restaurant. When we were little, my grandma, one of my grandma's favorite things, she would call us a bunch of jerks. And we would all laugh. And I look up and I see this sign and I think, all right, there's only 8 miles left. Like, what's 8 miles? I've already done 18. Like, and I limped to the end. Probably not the best advice to other runners, but I did it because I thought I fundraised. Flew all the way out here. There's no way I'm not finishing and getting my medal. And that mental game, it is a mental, things go wrong. Things go wrong all the time, whether it's too hot out or too cold or you slip or you fall or I work, through so many injuries. And I always say like, knock me down 9 times. I'm still going to get up that 10th time.
Right.
I will never not get up.
Well, you can do it now too. That's the thing about doing it. Running gives you self-confidence.
It does. And I'm not a fast runner. I'm the slowest runner on earth. I'm never going to place in my age group. I'm never going to qualify for anything, but I'm doing it.
That's
and it feels so good to know, like I can do this. If I can do this, I can deal with mental health challenges. Like if you can do this, you can do anything.
Right. It's like you have a sense of accomplishment. You did it too. But you also talk about how Teddy comes to you in certain ways through the feathers. That was so interesting that you talked about that.
Yeah. Blue jays have always reminded me of my brother, in part because they're loud and can be annoying, but they're also clowns. I mean, they're always swooping in and just, they always make me smile. And signs are everywhere when you look for them. If you're not looking for them, you're not going to see them. And so I'm always kind of looking for signs that my brother is with me. And the blue jays have been plentiful in my yard in the last, 8 years. Like, all right, I get it. And every day I'll go outside and I'll find blue jay feathers. And when I have something on my mind and I'll go for a walk and I come home with 6 or 7 of them and people are like, are the blue jays naked in your neighborhood? Like, how are you finding all these? And so I don't see it as a coincidence.
Yeah.
And so one of my tattoos is a blue jay for my brother on my left leg, and on my right leg, I have a donkey because when we were little, he looked Jenny up in a dictionary, and a Jenny is a female donkey. So when I run, one step is for me, one is for him.
You do a lot of research.
I did.
You did.
One of his favorite insults was to call me a big nerd, which I am a big nerd. I love to read. And whenever I see something, I need to try to make sense of it in my brain. And his death was one of those things I can't make sense of.
Right.
And so how do I make sense of everything else?
That was clear in the book because, I read it with a different perspective too. And I read it and go, this is one thing you can't figure out too. And did you have to come to that conclusion yourself?
I did, because until I came to that realization, I was up all night, every night, think the whys and the what ifs. And it was an equation that I couldn't solve, that I couldn't figure out by researching or reading or mapping or making lists. And sometimes there is no good reason.
But it's this frustrating too. Like I was, why was I saved? I had that feeling too. Like, why did this happen?
Why him and not me?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that type of thing. So you always go through that, but you have to learn that there are no answers. There are sometimes no answers too.
And that is hard for someone like me to accept.
Yeah.
That there are no answers.
Yeah.
But it's what keeps me going now.
Because we wrap up a little bit, I want to tell me a little bit about Healing Miles and how people get in touch with you too.
So like I said, Healing Miles is a program I founded to remember others lost to suicide. And it's not just to talk about how they died, but how they lived and what we miss most about our loved ones. So my website is jenniferhoye.com. You can go there and request a Healing Miles. There's a link for Healing Miles. And like I said, I get to know each person before I go out. I learn about the person. I read the submission. I talk with the family. They share photos, and I feel connected, and I carry them and their loved ones in my heart through the whole process.
Well, you're running for them. It's very personal.
Yeah.
And talk about, so I want to, people, if you are feeling suicidal, 998 is the number.
988.
988.
It's available online to call or text 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
And then the stigma. We really want to end the stigma of it and get help if you need it.
Absolutely.
Don't.
One of the bravest things that someone can do is to reach out for help.
Or say I need help too. Yeah, that's really hard to do for people, especially, we both understand that. Yeah, it's hard, but you did. I really appreciate you coming on the show. And I think this, we do a lot of book reviews, but this is important. This is a book review, whether it's a lot of importance attached to it, because I think we're going to hopefully reach some people and make things better, prevent somebody from having to go through it you went through and others go through the loss. I really appreciate it. And I urge people to read your book, Thick Thighs, Tattoos and Breaking Taboos. Like this, it rhymes. I love that it rhymes.
Thank you.
I love that it rhymes. I appreciate it. And thank you for everybody for tuning in to the Stoughton Writers Group. We'll be back with more shows down the road, and I appreciate it. Take care. Have a great day. Thank you.